When the Sega Dreamcast console was originally released in 1998, Sega was desperate to recapture the respective gamers, the attention of developers on the focus from consumers. Sega leadership from Japan and the United States specifically focused on creating new intellectual properties that could and would separate the Dreamcast from Nintendo or Sony related properties, and hopefully bring back the strength of Sega from the late 1900s and into the early 2000s. This did not occur, but that particular time for Sega was definitely unique and never quite replicated. But the speculative scenario is this: was Crazy Taxi the most underrated Dreamcast gaming experience? In the early 1990s, Sega was competing with Nintendo for dominance of the video game market or even the industry as a whole. Franchises of games on intellectual properties were being created, expanded, or even abandoned, in a massive attempt to see what could or should work, but not many were actually successful in Japan, the United States, or even Europe. Sega later had a disastrous mid and late 1990s with respect for their particular brand being gone, attention from developers non-existent, and the focus from consumers were elsewhere. The Dreamcast was the then final aspirations from Sega with consoles and games specifically for them. The original two Crazy Taxi games were released for the Sega Dreamcast in 1999 and 2001, as they were considered revolutionary at the time and viewed as the most unique intellectual property that Sega had developed for the console. Development for the original Crazy Taxi in particular had a clear intention to develop and bring an entirely new aspect of gaming for players to experience. The concept of the game was simple. The player assumed one of the selectable characters to drive customers to and from specific locations and to do other related tasks to earn as much fare as possible from the allotted time. There were no real examples of lore or story within the original two Dreamcast games, just an intense focus of play from developers to keep players engaged with the games as long as possible for initial interest and substantial replay value. The implementation of Crazy Taxi had developers try to make the games as unique as possible, but also to have a scope of normalcy for players to experience and for them to understand that it's still basically a taxi simulator. Extra features for the console had miniature games and a better map for players to see cursors or landmarks and even potential customers. The legacy of Crazy Taxi is that even during the era of the Dreamcast, Crazy Taxi was considered different on a true experience of the gaming potential with that console. From information now known, the gaming engine and dynamics were actually patented by Sega due to how revolutionary the premise of Crazy Taxi was. This was confirmed by a legal suit by Sega against publisher Radical Entertainment and developers Fox Interactive and Electronic Arts over the Simpsons Road Rage for a nearly exact concept with their game. Due to Sega nearly controlling the taxi premise, there have been nearly no other examples of such by any other publisher in the years or decades since the original two Crazy Taxis, as eventually further Crazy Taxi games were created and eventually the reboot for the franchise as well.